Welcome to another video brought to you by the Ball Basket World War II Living History Group. If you're new to the channel, this is the first video you've seen, please go check out the channel. We are a living history group that cover Operation Ball Basket, which was a mission in the Vienne region around D-Day, Vienne region of France, by B Squadron of the 1st SAS. And we're a living history group based around that operation. So go check the channel out if this is your first visit to the channel. Today's video is going to be about one of the most famous firearms, I'd say, from the Second World War, the STEN gun. We're going to go through a little bit of history about the STEN gun, and more importantly, this one in particular, because I'm hoping that there's going to be somebody out there, or a few of you, that will be able to help me with this STEN identification, because it's a bit of an unusual one, and it's had even many of the experts so far stumped. Hopefully you can help us. So, starting with a very, very brief history of the STEN. There are plenty of videos on YouTube that I don't want to compete with that they really understand. But as a basic history of the STEN gun, at the beginning of the Second World War, the British Army didn't have a submachine gun other than, say, the Lanchester, which is based off the MK18 from the World War I era. And that was not in widespread use. It's a very well-made gun, but that was part of the problem. Very expensive to make, time-consuming to make. Now, we were getting Thompson submachine guns, though, in very small numbers at the beginning of the war. But really, it was Bren's as a light machine gun and SMLE, short magazine, the Enfields. There was no real submachine guns. After Dunkirk, the evacuation from the British Expeditionary Force from France, we lost a lot of our weaponry over there. And we needed to ramp up production of weapons, which we did for the Bren and for the Lee Enfields and things like that. But we also started looking at, could we make our own submachine gun, because we were buying Thompsons in from America and we were losing a lot of them. After having been paid in gold bullion, we were losing over half in to the U-boat attacks. So they started looking at how can we make our own. And they came up with the Mark I STEN. This is a Mark II. The Mark I has more wood on it. It's a little bit better made, has a very iconic conical flash hider. That was tested, adopted, and the order was placed. But even as soon as that order was placed, the British military were thinking, how can we simplify it even more? So the designers went back, which was Shepherd and Turpin. That is where the ST in STEN comes from, Shepherd and Turpin. And then there's much debate whether it's EN for England or EN for Enfield. I'll leave you to decide that. There's plenty of research on both, but that's where the name STEN comes from. Shepherd and Turpin, England or Enfield. They went back and designed the Mark II. The Mark II was initially designed to be used as a paratrooper version, so they wanted it to break down even further. So they designed a few features such as the barrel can be removed, the stock is much easier removed, so basically you can break the STEN gun down to about that far. So the Mark II, interestingly, was tested and orders were placed before the first Mark I's had even left the production line. This and the Mark I were both in production at the same time, but this is the STEN that everybody knows, the Mark II. It's the one that was used most widespread. It's a 9mm blowback submachine gun, which means that it fires from an open bolt, and as you pull the trigger, the bolt flies forward, hits the round, and the force of that round firing will then blow back the bolt, blow back. It's a very simple design. The STEN is well known for many problems. One of the problems is actually not necessarily the STEN's fault. It is a fault with all blowback machine guns, which is, if I demonstrate on this other STEN, you can have it where the bolt will go back far enough to clear the magazine, which means that when the bolt comes forward, it can chamber around. Now the STEN gun, being blowback, it has a fixed firing pin, so as soon as that goes forwards, you don't have to pull the trigger to hit the hammer, it will fire a round off. So these were well, and you get that caught on your jacket, webbing, getting into the door of a vehicle, it will pull back enough to clear the magazine housing, and then it would let go, chamber around and fire. These are supposed to be fired from all the way back here. The bolt will lock back, you pull the trigger and the bolt will slam forward. This is the safety catch on a STEN. And they're well known for dropping and firing. A lot of that is you could drop it, it could bounce, miss the seer, or force its way past the seer and fire. The other problems with the STEN that it's known for is things like the magazine, which it's a double stack, meaning 1 round, 2 round, 3 round, 4 round in a zigzag, but they come out of single feed lips. So when you see in films them holding it like that, you wouldn't do that, because you're going to invite a blockage there, because the magazine won't feed correctly. As you can see, it's not the tightest fits. You don't hold it there. The STEN gun is designed to be held there. That's what this heat shroud is for. I've also met people, you have to be careful that your little finger doesn't bounce in, and I've met people who have trapped their little finger in these as they're firing and lost part of their finger. But the STEN had its problems, but it got rid of the big problem, which was we didn't have enough weapons for our army. We needed something cheap, and it did the job. It worked great. Loads of countries copied it. Oh, I should have mentioned the bolt. So the bolt being pulled back, they fixed that later in the war with this type, which has, hopefully you can see, a small hole that the safety catch can now become the cocking handle. With it pressed through, it can't go anywhere. Pull it out and it will cycle. Stops you catching it. I should have mentioned that earlier. Now, I know what many of you are going to be thinking. The SAS didn't use STENs. And no, as a general rule, they didn't. They certainly didn't take them on bull basket with them. But it is part of the story, as the MK2 would have used them. In fact, Amity Mangard, the leader of the SOE in that area, had actually told London to stop sending STENs. One, because they weren't very useful. They proved not very useful in that region. But also, they had plenty of them. There was just a lot of these dropped to the resistance. It's almost become a symbol of the resistance. And this type was dropped because it could be dropped in a small box. You could fit lots of them in a drop container. It was the ideal thing. I should have also mentioned the stock also comes as a T stock. You'll see both on the Mark II. This was the first design, but what they figured out is you've got the plate on the back, the plate here, a bar and a plate. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. Why have 4 pieces when you can just have 2? One piece of bent metal round welded to a plate. So this solved 2 problems really, because the other problem with the STEN with the T grip is there's nowhere really to put your cheek when you're trying to aim. At least this gives the impression of a stock, so you can at least have something to rest your cheek on. So as I say, about 2.6 million were made. It was copied by countries all over the world. And this was actually not called the STEN submachine gun. The British Army know it as the STEN machine carbine. So that's where that comes from. Now, maybe you can help us with this particular STEN. This particular one I bought from a militaria dealer, and he sold it as a resistance type STEN. And I did ask, why do they think it's resistance? And he says the build just wasn't quite right in some of the features. Now, when I got it, it was hand painted black, and it did look very homemade. I scrubbed the paint off, and actually I've got it back to the original finish, and it's actually a very nice finish. Normally these STEN guns were just sort of quickly sprayed black, and you'll see them almost just back to bare metal now. But this one has got a very nice finish. The welds have been ground back into a nice shape, and just the general stamping and the quality is actually quite good. Now these Mark II STENs were made all over the country. The parts were made all over the country. One factory would make the butt, one factory might make the trigger cover, some might make the barrel shroud, and no one ever made a complete gun. It's to keep it secret. They were then sent to certain manufacturers to assemble, and this one is assembled at the Birmingham Small Arms BSA factory. I know many people think it's British Small Arms, but just remember, you hurt a Brummie's heart every time you say it's British Small Arms. It's Birmingham Small Arms. Part of the factory is still there. Go and have a look. This one was assembled at BSA, going by the number on the bottom of the magazine well. It has a B prefix and this is in the 53317. That is the number, and it's got a B. Birmingham Small Arms is what the research says. Now, here's where the unusual bits come in, which hopefully you can help us with. It says on the top STEN Mark II, like they all do, except this one says STEN Mark II, the number 2, rather than Roman numerals. Everything in the British military, especially back then, was Roman numerals, so why is this one Mark II? One answer is post-war versions of it made by other countries said Mark II, the number 2. But there's also literature to say that early STENs can have Mark II instead of Roman numerals. So that's the first conundrum. The second one that struck me, even at the picture when I bought it, why is that cut off? Now, if you look at a lot of Danish resistance STENs, that is the shape they are. They're flat-fronted. But this one has actually been cut. It is a genuine piece that's been cut. And as I ground the paint off, this receiver has been chopped in half at some point, and it's been welded back together, not particularly well. So a way of deactivating it. Now, if it was going to be deactivated for the collector market, why ruin it? So that, and you can take this off, so you don't have to cut this. This has been to make it not be used again. A little bit like you can get the parts kit sent to America. So was this designed to be sent as a parts kit? Was it surplus that someone chopped in half to send to America and it didn't get there? I still don't know why you wouldn't remove this cover. It's 2 screws. That's also part of an indication to say it is a British STEN, and an early one of these screws. Not too far into production, we changed these screws for just a press fit, simplifying production, but this has screws, so also leading to it being a British STEN. I'll get to why I keep going back to it British in a second. Then I started looking, and the barrel originally was that long. This is an add-on. This last inch is an add-on that's been welded on, not particularly straight and not particularly well. It is just a smooth piece of, I believe, stainless, just to give it the correct World War II STEN barrel. Now, I get that if you're going to chop this, you might chop the barrel to make it no longer be able to be used. But chopping a barrel that way is not going to stop it from working. In fact, many STEN guns during the war, depending on whether they had suppressors or what ammunition they were using, you can shorten the barrel. So I get it being put back on to make it sellable as a collector's piece, but why was it chopped in the first place, or was it a short barrel? Certain resistance STENs, such as the Norwegian ones, have a short barrel, because the barrel length and the types of ammunition can affect the operating of this. So that was another conundrum. And then once I'd got the paint off, I noticed a crown. There's a few proof marks on the barrel, and there's proof marks on this shroud. There's also a couple on the receiver here, and there is a crown on the stock. So almost all the important pieces have a crown on. And I've tried to find the crown, and I came to the conclusion it's Belgian. And I sent some pictures off to the Royal Armouries, and they are Belgian marks, except, like I found on the internet, they're not the normal Belgian marks. They're not placed correctly. They're not placed on top of each other as they should. One of them is upside down. And they're proof marks on bits that don't necessarily need proofing, certainly not over other bits. The shroud, the barrel itself has proofs on it, but the shroud, the stock, I mean, there's a plate behind, I mean, that does become part of the pressure variant thing, but there's only a crown on it. I'll show pictures of the crown. So, can you help us identify this STEN? I've heard lots of stories, but if anyone has any evidence to suggest it is this or is that. Now, the first one that's going to come back, so I'll try and dispel that straight away, is the ASARM or ASARM STEN, which was a Belgian copy. Belgium had so many of these after the war that they actually started issuing them, and they would stamp them, proof them, and issue them out. But they were normally sent to their factory, and they would have ASARM stamped on the bottom, and it would be given a new serial number. And they used to do a few changes. They can have like a different cocking handle. They used to put a sling swivel here. They drill the stock and put a sling swivel there. This doesn't have evidence of those at all. So yeah, hopefully you can help us identify this STEN. It is either a later production one because it has the push-through safety, early ones are also quite often fitted with that. They would just retrofit, they drill the bolt, drill the receiver, and you've got your new safety catch. So it could still be an early production, but that serial number could be incorrect. It looks pretty correct, but these parts were all chopped and changed around, so maybe the magazine housing is a replacement part, and that's the only BSA bit. The rest is Belgian, but it doesn't. The finish doesn't match the Belgian ones I've seen. Even grinding off the weld seems too good. I've seen BSA STENS do that, so it does all add to it being a BSA maybe originally. The quality is very good, even for a STEN. It's completely thrown us, so hopefully you can help us. So please leave a comment. You can also find us on Facebook. The Ball Basket World War II Living History Group is on Facebook. You can always contact us there. Let us know what you think. So that was a basic history of the STEN, and this one in particular. Hopefully you can help us, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe, share, like. It all helps us out. Hopefully you found it interesting. Thank you for watching. Oh, I should add, we went out for a drive today in the Jeep, and two of our members have other YouTube channels. We have Review the Past, and we have Hodgetts on History. Please go find them, watch their videos. There's plenty on Hodgetts on History of the group's visit to the VN when we went for the 80th remembrance celebrations of Operation Ball Basket. Go check them out. We went out in the Jeep today for a little run round to find an old US military camp, a holding camp before D-Day, and it was a light anti-aircraft battery as well. We went to find that in the Jeep. Go check that out on Review the Past channel. Not that I'm pressuring him to make another video, Chris. Go check that out. That should be out soon. And he's got loads of fantastic videos there about local history, World War II history, so go check them out. And again, thanks for watching.